Hello, and welcome to today's video. Today I'll be showing you how to quickly and effectively paint a marble texture on miniatures. This is a technique that I stumbled across myself, and I'm sure this has a proper name, but I really don't know what it is. I'm not formally trained in art, so I really don't know what the actual name of this technique is, but it's very quickly and works fantastic. So let's begin. I have my two colors on a wet palette. I basically have a puddle of one, the blue, and another puddle of the gray. And I poured my airbrush thinner onto my wet palette on top of the colors. And then I let the colors themselves kind of just run and meld together. So I had this big old gradient going from the blue to the gray with a large swath of color between the two. And then I grab my brush, dip it in water, and go straight from the water to my wet palette, pick up whatever paint I can, and just place drops on top of the pieces. I'll leave a big old pool of a darker shade, and I go back, wet my brush, pick up the lighter shade, and then put a pool of the lighter shade right next to where the darker shade's at. And I keep doing this over and over, making sure there's an abundant amount of water, letting the colors just kind of sit there and flow. It's very similar to unstirred paint that you see when you get a canister of like wall paint and they first put droplets of dye into your base color. It gets these all really cool patterns and swirls to it. That's exactly what we're doing with this technique. Putting these pools of watered down diluted paint of contrasting colors right next to each other. And when the borders of those two pools collide, they start causing these very cool, interesting swirls to occur. Once I have the entire base covered in this swirling pools, I then take my airbrush and I give it a quick blow with air just to kind of mix colors even further. It is a really simple technique. It took me about 8 minutes total to I think I have 18 bases. So 8 minutes to 18 bases with this technique. Very quick, very simple. Now it's not going to be as realistic as doing a multi-layered technique like we do with, say, wet blending, where you paint on splash of paint, you draw in your veins of contrasting color, and then you paint on another layer of transparent paint on top of there. Do another set of your veins on top of there and just keep repeating over and over again. That's a very time-consuming process and does create a very realistic effect. This is much more for speed. It goes very quickly, it creates very interesting patterns that are visually fun to look at, and it's really, really easy to do. After finishing the marbling effect, I move on to painting the cobblestones. For this, I was trying to test my skills in the airbrush. All these steps can actually be completed with just a regular brush and not an airbrush. I'm applying a dark earth tone in order to create a base layer for all cobblestones. In addition to painting the cobblestones, I'm also painting all the rubble effects with this dark earth tone. I'm intentionally doing a little bit of overspray onto the marble to create a dust effect around the little grains of gravel. After base coating the cobblestones with a dark brown, I come back with a lighter tone of brown and pick out a few individual cobblestones. This is going to help give some character to the otherwise repetitive pattern that is located underneath the marble areas. Now I move on to an off-white and pick out a few more cobblestones. I'm trying to keep a ratio of about half the number of cobblestones I did in my medium tone. I'm doing this off-white tone. With this, you can see I'm having some issues with tip dry, resulting in a lot of spattering of the light tone across other cobblestones. I'm honestly not too worried about this because we're going to come back with a wash and smooth out all these various tones together, and so those speckles will be almost invisible when we're done. Once we're done picking out the individual light colored cobblestones, come back with the same color and do a dry brush over the rubble. This is going to give a nice bright contrast to the dark earths underneath the rubble. When we add our washes on top of this, it'll smooth everything out and give a really good contrast to those individual grains of small gravel compared to the dusty overspray did around it. Now that we've finished our baseline painting, we gloss coat everything and start applying our washes. I begin by applying a very heavy wash of dark sepia to all the cobblestones. This will help tie in together those brighter colored cobblestones to the rest of the colors that are on that area. I'm doing a heavy wash because the very subtle contours of these otherwise flat areas will build up pools of the darker brown color. This will give even more variation between different cobblestones on a single area. We now come by with a medium gray concrete wash. Because this is a medium gray tone between the lighter dry brush color we did on the rubble and the darker earth tone we did as base coat, it will help blend two contrasting colors together and create a nice overall color to the rubble piles. Also, because this is a gray based wash instead of a brown based wash, the piles of rubble that are on top of the cobblestone directly will contrast out. This helps create emphasis on the various details of the model. For our final wash, we come back with a blackish blue sapphire color. We're applying this to all the intersections of pieces on the base to give it a well-defined border. The reason for this is because this set of bases is intended for a Scyrah army which is being painted in an animated style. That means for cell shading, pretty much everything needs a dark outline to contrast the various areas of the model. I originally tried this with a dark black. Dark black just looked too harsh of a contrast. However, this dark blue color works perfectly for the blue marble. To emphasize some of the damage and dings that are on these marble tiles, I apply the wash directly to the divots. When I wipe away the divots, I wipe towards the hard edge of the crack in the tile. This ensures that the wash is built up on one edge, giving a darker tone where it's deepest, and feathers out to shallow and almost invisible on the less sharp angle. Our final step is to paint the edges of the base black. In addition to painting the base edges black, I'm also painting the very rim of the bases black as well. It's just a stylistic preference. Many times you'll see these elaborate diorama style bases where there's a sudden cutoff to the diorama part where it meets the edge of the base and they paint that solid black. I personally prefer that style preference, but you don't have to do that. You could paint the edges of your marble tiles the same color as your marble and look just as fine. And there you have it, finished marble tiles. These bases by Secret Weapon Miniatures are really fun to paint. There are tons of details on these things, and all the molds are of a top quality. If there are any bubbles in the molds themselves, they will always be located on the flat bottom where you will never ever see them. I'm a huge fan of Secret Weapon Miniatures products. The variety they have for any type of army theme you have going on is just wonderful. I really like how the simple effect they did with the marble turned out. It made painting all these bases so much easier and faster than the wet blending technique I was trying at the start. With the very large plate, this was my original test piece, and I had done a final sealing in coat of a gloss of varnish to protect it, and so that actually ruined some of the edges on the gravel and cobblestone. I could not fully remove that coating when I was going to repaint it, so some of these piles of gravel and cobblestone aren't as well defined as on the others. As you can see with the actual models from the army pose on top of them, that brilliant white and blue color matches excellently with the purples and brilliant blues on the army itself. These pieces work great. The edge lining makes the cell shading on the models on top work as well. I just love the overall effect of this. Thanks for watching. As always, have fun painting.